I guess I'm right. Oh yeah, okay. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about The French Connection.
Before we get started today, just a quick shout out to our friends at the Film Geezers podcast. This is a film podcast by film lovers for film lovers. It's everything from rankings to reviews, sort of similar to our podcast, except instead of talking about one film, they typically choose a series of films or a collection of films and talk about them each week. Pretty up to date, pretty modern, a lot of film news stuff, but also a lot of old film news stuff. So if you like films, if you like this podcast, you'll like Film Geezers. So go check them out. Oh man. Okay.
Do you want to introduce the new movie first? The movie we're watching next week?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. What? Right. That's right. And next week, for those of you, no, let me do that again. Shannon, I'm going to do that again. And next week, we are going to be watching Ikiru. I got to pick the film this coming week. It is Akira Kurosawa, 1951 or 57. It's one of those two.
What? Okay.
Well, it came out in one of those 2 years. It's either, because I was just looking on Letterboxd, so I can't remember if it was a 1 or a 7, because the 1 and 7 kind of look pretty similar.
It's 1952, so you were wrong, actually, completely.
I was just wrong.
That's okay.
It's one of my favorite Kurosawa films. Absolutely beautiful, touching, heart-wrenching. Has a sort of plot line similar to Rashomon, just in kind of the way they tell the story, I guess. There's kind of like a lot of moving parts to it. It's also very sad, but in a way that you feel like you've grown as a person. And of course, as all of Kurosawa's work, it just looks absolutely magnificent. So I'm very excited for you to watch this film. I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah. It's good. I'm excited as well. Oh, okay. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a little tired. It's early here.
Well, you had to get up
Nevada.
earlier. Well, we technically got up earlier than we usually do. So it's like technically 6 a.m. there.
It's only 6 here. So
well, your body feels like it's 6 a.m. there. Well, it's a daylight savings, right?
Yeah, it sure is.
So it's like what, 7 there? And
yeah,
that sucks. Here, let's get the show started. All right, fucking. This week we watched a film that neither of us have watched, and we decided to go with kind of like another 70s crime movie, kind of sort of also in lieu with Friends of Eddie Coyle, and a movie that we also both enjoyed. We picked the 1971's directed by William Friedkin, The French Connection. The French Connection, I think, in reference to this connection where heroin would be made in Indochina, and it would be made like through Turkey, through France, and into the United States. And I think that was like in the 50s and 60s and stuff like that. It's based on a book which is about two real people. Like a nonfiction book about two real NYPD detectives. And I guess kind of getting into it, Austin, could you kind of explain what the movie is about? I guess in a sentence or two.
Yeah, you kind of covered the broader strokes of it, but it's basically late 1960s, early 1970s drug drama. It has a lot of similarities to The Friends of Eddie Coyle in the ways it's shot. A lot of kind of that early American New Wave. It's about these two cops who are on the hunt. They don't play by the rules, and they're down to catch this drug dealer, and they'll do whatever it takes to take down this drug kingpin.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I said that it's similar to Friends of Eddie Coyle, but I think Friends of Eddie Coyle is probably a little bit more stylistic than this movie, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that
Mm-hmm.
Friedkin, the way he directs his movies, even like The Exorcist, which is his most famous movie, probably. This movie came out
Mm-hmm.
before Exorcist, and but his movies are very he I watched this documentary about him, and I found out that he only likes to do one takes, maybe two. So so his movies are very, very like off the cuff, immediately, very immediate.
Uh-huh.
So his movies are like have like kind of like weird documentary elements to him, it feels like.
Yeah.
Because I guess documentaries, for the most part, they're filmed in the moment, and his movies feel that way too. While Friends of Eddie Coyle feels like a very patient, very like, regimented movie
Rehearsed.
that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, very rehearsed. And French can, yeah, that's the other thing. Friedkin's like, I don't do rehearsals. Like rehearsals are for sissies, I think he said, or something like that. He's like, yeah, I don't do rehearsals. I do everything in one take, and yeah, that's it. So, and his movies feel that way, but in a good way. For some reason, he's able to be very successful at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's definitely even more the case in a film like this where they had a very small budget. And so a lot of the shots are kind of shot off the cuff, or often uh, most of the people in the shot, other than, of course, your two main actors, are non actors, or, they'll be shooting, of course, we get into later, a lot of the car chase scenes or a lot of the scenes where they're running around
Yeah,
the
they're like
city.
stolen for
They're like
sure.
stolen. They don't get proper permits. And so they're driving around cities. And so it does have this sort of documentary esque. It reminds me a little bit of that film with, who's the guy from The Graduate? Dustin Hoffman. Midnight Cowboy. It kind of has a similar
Oh yeah,
look and feel to that, where you're kind of shooting, in New York City. Of course, this isn't in New York City though. This is
it's
it?
New York City.
Yeah, but it's like it's not in the city. It's in
Oh,
like
like you mean
mostly in
like a
like,
certain neighborhood, like maybe
yeah,
like
it's in like a
Brooklyn or something
borough.
like
I
that.
think maybe
Yeah,
Brooklyn. Yeah, it's like a certain borough of New York, but it
yeah.
kind of has
I
that
guess you're right.
similar feel.
They're not really like in downtown or
They're
anything
not in
like that. But I
Manhattan, I
think
guess.
because I think like there's a lot of shots with like the Brooklyn Bridge, right? So maybe that's like an
Yeah, yeah. I
indication that
think
we're in Brooklyn.
yeah, I think it's in Brooklyn,
Yeah,
but it has that kind of same look to it, where it's like everyone's kind of like, oh, like in the moment. And of course, I guess part of that is just because it's a lot of like just one takes, right? Just kind of there
yeah,
capturing it, but also just because a lot of the shots are, as you said, stolen. So it's a lot of, hiding in cars and shooting from far distances, a lot of using of long lenses so they can shoot from, however far they need to, so they can capture it without kind of disturbing the public, I guess.
yeah. Freakin likes to use long lenses. He likes to use zooms a lot, I've
Mm-hmm.
noticed. I've watched like a few of his movies this past week, and he loves to do that. He loves to do like kind of like the thing where you're zoomed in on something, or you zoom in and out, and then you pan over to something that's happening either in the foreground or the background.
Mm-hmm.
He does that a lot, and in fact, the movie starts with that, where the movie kind of starts off with a zoom like that in Marseille.
Sure.
It's like a
Yeah.
French like sea town.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think someone gets killed. Some like a guy gets killed right away. He gets shot in the fucking face. And you're like, oh, okay. um, and you learn that I think that's how the movie starts, right? It starts in Marseille.
Yeah, it starts in Marseille. We follow this
Yeah,
guy around and he immediately gets shot, which I'm still not
it's like a
entirely clear
police
about.
detective.
Is it the police detective that's killed?
Yeah, a police detective gets killed who's
Okay.
investigating the heroin smuggling syndicate.
Okay.
Um, Yeah, where we learn about this. Yeah, it's killed by the hitman, the guy who gets shot in the back
Hmm.
later in the movie. Um, and the guy Pierre,
So
he
French.
is we learned that like at the beginning of the film through a couple ensuing scenes that he wants to smuggle in heroin,
Hmm.
a lot of heroin, like really good heroin. And he, in order to do that, what he does is that he gets like a television star friend of his, Henry, to travel by ship, because I think it would be easy, it's easier to smuggle shit, and put it into like a compartment in his car.
Hmm.
Well, I guess we don't know it's in his car necessarily. We just know that like they need Henry because Henry has like the right, I don't know, esteem to be able to easily travel by ship with all these drugs and like get into the United States easily. We learned that in the ensuing like handful of opening scenes here and there.
Yeah, and
um
there's a nice
yeah.
foreshadowing scene too, where
Mhm.
when the actor first gets to the U.S., he's like bombarded by all these reporters because, of course, he's like
Yep.
a famous actor coming to America and all that.
Yeah.
And they ask him like, why did he travel by ship? And so he's giving this explanation, and then of course, right behind him, you can see his car being
Mhm.
lifted out of the ship and onto land, which they don't at this point. You don't know where. Like, you know that he's involved in the drug trade of some kind, but you don't know that
Yeah,
it's
he's
in his
being paid to
car.
do all these things. Yeah.
Right. So it's a nice little foreshadowing moment there.
Hmm. Hmm. And I don't even think he knows that he's like smuggling it in his car, right? Or at least
I don't
he's,
think he does.
because at the end he's kind of like, what the fuck am I, like, what's going on, like, so I don't think he's entirely sure what he's got himself into. But yeah.
Mm-mm.
But we're introduced to our protagonists, New York City detectives Jimmy Popeye Doyle and Buddy Cloudy Russo, played by Gene Hackman and Roy Scheider,
I was
respectively.
I was watching the TCM version of this, so they always do like a little like opening thing before the film starts.
Right, yeah, like
And
got some guy. He's like, ooh,
and they talked about how the director really didn't want Gene Hackman. And because Gene
yeah,
Hackman like he was shooting for the part. He really wanted it. And the director's like, I really don't want Gene Hackman. But then they ended up getting Gene Hackman because no one else would sign on to do the film. So he he just kind of got stuck with them. Which, I mean, great performance by Gene Hackman, but I appreciate the roundabout way in which Gene Hackman got
yeah.
the position as this prototypical 1970s cop who doesn't follow the rules. This film is very it's a tad, I guess, at least propaganda esque, very war on drugs. Oh, we've lost Andrew. I hope he comes back. Shannon, cut this part out. Let me see if he texted me. He usually texts me when this. Alfie, stop being a bitch. Go somewhere else. Hey, stop. Man, Andrew's been going for a hot minute. Hey, Barry. Man, Andrew's been going a hot minute.
Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Mm-hmm.
You good?
Yeah, my internet was freaking out for some reason. I don't know why. I had to like reset the router and everything, which is something I've
Oh,
never
damn.
had to do here before. So kind of weird that I had to do that, but whatever. It's fucking annoying.
I'm glad you made it back.
Okay. Yeah, you're in the middle of saying something.
Let me think if I can remember what I was saying. Let's see. Gene Hackman. Oh, I remember. So what I was saying was that this film, in many ways, is just a anti-drug, war on drugs propaganda film. It's
Yeah, basically
very,
that's what it is. Yeah.
it's very like drugs are gonna kill you. They're the end of times, and only these two cops who will do literally anything. I mean, we call them the protagonists of the piece, but they're not good people.
Right.
Like they're
I say protagonists in trepidation. They're not really, which is
they're the
why it's
people
a
we follow.
which is why it's a good movie to watch. That's why it's a good movie, honestly.
Mhm. But we meet them.
Yeah.
One of them's wearing a Santa Claus suit. I can't remember which one.
Gene Hackman,
And Gene Hackman, that's right. Gene Hackman's
Popeye.
character, Popeye. Did you know, this is a random fact, but the precinct where Popeye and the other detective worked was
Mhm.
eventually turned into a restaurant, and that
Oh, cool.
restaurant became the first Popeye's Chicken.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did
We
it.
did it.
I didn't know the first Popeye's chicken was in New York City.
Neither did I. You would think like Louisiana or somewhere in the
Yeah,
South,
you think it
right?
would like at least like come from there. That's kind of weird. I guess it just shows you how like I don't know, like Popeyes isn't bad, but it's like, it's probably like, New York people maybe emulating it a little bit. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the history, but continue.
Anyways, Gene Hackman, Popeye, he's in a Santa Claus costume, which apparently actually happened to the real Popeye. And he's being a detective.
Yeah,
He's
sounds like
doing his
something.
detective thing. He's like giving presents to kids or just talking to small children while spying on a community of people inside of a bar who they believe are in the drug trade of some sort. Although it is,
They're black people in it. They're pretty much all
yes,
black people.
it's pretty much just black people. Like it definitely seems like
Yeah.
they're only arresting them because they're black. So,
Yeah.
there is that. But they're spying on them and they run into the bar. One of them like runs away, like
Yeah.
runs out of the bar, and they chase after him.
hmm Which is a great chase. I like that foot chase. Like even like the foot chases, like this movie is really known for its like car chases, and they're really good.
Mm-hmm.
But the foot chases are also really good and exciting. This one at the beginning had really good editing, very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, they chase after this guy, and like he has a knife, and he cuts Roy Scheider, and they run away, and they finally get him, and they beat him up, and it's just kind of like it has nothing really to do with like what we, I guess, like not really connected to to the events of the movie. It just kind of sets them up as people. Like they're willing to just kind of like tackle and beat up a guy. And just like, yeah, and they're pretty racist and all that.
Because they need the information. They gotta do
They
whatever
need
it
they
takes,
need some kind of
Andrew.
like drug related information from the guy. Yeah. Yeah, it's just like it just all has to do with drugs. It's like, okay.
And he gives them some like address or something. But like you said, I don't think it really relates to the rest of the film other than showing the fact that these are two guys who will go to the ends of the earth to stop the drug trade, to end the evils of heroin and marijuana.
Exactly. Dirt marijuana, literally like it's you might as well just be smoking like dry dirt. You might anyway, yeah. I like the line where they get back to the precinct and they're like, such a hard day being a black people. Wow. And I think Roy Clouds, he's like, never trust you never trust and he says, the N-word. And then Gene
Mm-hmm.
Hackman Popeye says, that guy could have been white. You never trust anybody. Like they're they're just the ultimate police officers. You know, they're extremely racist, but they are racist to everyone and everything. Like they just hate and don't trust anything and anyone, and they'll do anything to, I don't know, like do what they feel like they need to do. Yeah, I
They'll
like that
injure
line.
and yeah, they'll injure and
Yeah,
kill anyone and everyone for the sake of peace.
even other cops,
Yes.
they'll injure and kill other cops as well.
But then the day's over. They've done their hard, beating up
Mhm.
of the black community and just
As I said,
pestering
yeah.
human
Yep.
people in general. And they decide to go to a bar. But of course,
Yep.
Gene Hackman can just never turn it off. Like he's always a
No,
detective, 100% of the time.
it's true.
And so they're watching like this guy basically just, having a drink, just living his life. And they're like, we should
It's like
follow
him and a
this
bunch of
guy.
people and they're partying. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's basically like, we should stalk this guy because I guess that's what police officers do in their free time. They just
Mhm.
do more police officer work. Well,
They're
policing.
like yeah, they're like suspicious of him because
Mhm,
I think they're just like connecting a bunch of dots. Like he's hanging out with like a bunch of people that they recognized who are criminals, and it's a guy played by Tony Lo Bianco. Is that his name?
yeah.
Tony. Yeah, he's
Uh,
great.
yeah.
He's not like he doesn't stand out in the movie all that much, but I've seen him in other movies and he's very, very good. I like him a lot. Um, and yeah, he's just like hanging out with like these different people, and it's Sal, I think the character's name is. He's like a grocery store guy, and they're just very like yeah, they're um yeah, they're just he's like hanging out with like mobsters and stuff like that, um and they're just a little suspicious, so they follow him to like his
Mhm.
like store, and they end up doing a lot of stakeouts. There's a lot of stakeouts in the movie.
So much of this movie is people walking around, people running, people driving cars, or just people
Yeah,
watching other people. Like that's most of the movie is
that's
just
basically
people
the movie.
watching
Yeah,
other people.
sometimes Jimmy Doyle, he'll have sex, he'll like pick up a woman and have sex with her,
Oh yeah.
but that's pretty much it.
Yep. I'm trying to think what happens at the stakeouts because there's a lot of
Well, they're
stakeouts.
they're just like watching Sal, and they're just like kind of like noticing that he's just acting kind of weird. Like they're just kind of like, why is this guy who like owns like a shitty grocery store, like why is he like so rich? And they
Hmm.
connect him with like, I think, the mobster's lawyer, and they even like go into his place and they talk to like his wife and stuff, and they like chat her up, and they do
Oh
everything
yeah.
that they can. They take pictures, you know they spy into their windows and stuff. They just do a bunch of like extra stuff, and just kind of trying to figure out like what Sal is up to. And then I think you get the second instance in which they go bust into the bar.
Yes.
It's right after that.
They bust into the same bar that they did the opening scene, but this is basically just a prolonged version of the opening where everyone in the bar is forced up against the wall, which I mean, I guess you could just do in 1970. Like if you're a police officer, you can just walk into a
Definitely.
bar. I guess if you're, I mean, I guess if you're
If you feel
black,
there are
then you,
drugs, yeah. Well, if you
yeah.
have drugs, you're fucked. You know what I mean? It sucks. That would really, really suck. If you're like, yeah, that would suck.
So they're all thrown up against the bar, and they're treating them kind of shitty. And I think Popeye like runs his hand like under the bar because I guess that's where like people hide their drugs when
Yeah.
the cops come. And he pulls out a bunch of like marijuana
Mhm.
and
Yeah, like the
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 bad
gro- the
stuff.
grossest marijuana I've ever seen. Like it's like the worst like marijuana of all time. Like it's basically just like, I don't know, it's basically just like oregano. It
I'm
might
pretty
as
sure
well
they
be.
just used
Like
oregano. It's probably just
oregano would
oregano.
be, well, I'm sure that's like what weed looked like in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I'm sure like smoking oregano would get you more high than smoking whatever that was.
But they harass a bunch of them. They like kind of go
Yeah.
down the line because of course they're all criminals, I guess. And so, he has to give them the talking to.
I like when they pretend to drop something and he's like, pick that back up. That's because they're just like, they're trying to like get like shit off of them so they don't get caught. And he's like, I saw you drop it, pick it back up. Like, geez. Yeah, they're
Pretty
mean.
intense. They're not the nicest of people. And then one of the people of the bar like walk out of the bathroom and he's
Yeah.
confused because he was in the bathroom the whole time. But
Yeah. He's like, what's going on?
like, what's going on? Like, I was just like, I had to pee.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they're immediately suspicious of him because he wasn't in the lineup.
Yeah, and like Jimmy like beats him up and he throws him in the room and it's like, oh wait, he's just an informer. And that's pretty much, I love how like we had this big long setup just so they could get to this scene where he talks to the informant pretty much. It's great. And yeah, he's like I think the informant is basically just like, look, like they're like no drugs. Or like I think the reason why he wanted to search everybody to see like what kind of like drugs they had. And like I think they came to the conclusion that like there's like nothing like really all that good on the street right now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what the informant basically says, like, yeah, there's nothing going on, but I heard that I think he says like there's going to be like a really big shipment of really good stuff soon. I think it's going to happen here soon. And so he knows that like, something is awaiting on the horizon, which as we know is pretty much correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also
So
after that, he goes to like the chief and the chief is just kind of, and he has to like convince and talk to the two of them. The two detectives have to like talk to the chief and try to convince him like, look, like we feel, even though we don't have like a ton of evidence, we really do feel like something big is going to happen.
yep. And then after that scene, is that when you get when the French guy, Tony, he's like meeting with the like chemist or something, and they're like testing the heroin.
I don't know if it's like, I don't know like when that part is, but I do
I
like
don't know
that
when it
part of the
is.
movie. Like that's like somewhere like near the middle where yeah, like the they were like Sal and like I think like some other mobster guy, they like test the heroin that they're gonna get. Cause yeah, that's the idea. They're gonna buy like a bunch of heroin and they're from these French people and they're gonna sell it. Um and yeah, it's great. He like uses these like chemistry instruments to like figure
Mm-hmm.
out the like purity of it. It's a good scene, and he's just like, "Wow, this is the most purest shit of all time. Like this is that everyone's gonna love this shit. Like it's just that good." So yeah, like we now as the audience basically know, like yeah, for sure there is going to be um yeah a lot of really good heroin suddenly appear on the street. I think you also get that other scene where like they're buying cars and stuff, like they're buying shitty
Yeah.
cars for like scrap
Mm-hmm.
metal. um yeah, it's just kind of like it's just you have two different things going on. You have like the French people and like the mobster people, they're getting ready to like do it, they're getting ready to like buy a lot of buy and sell a lot of drugs. And then you have Popeye and Cloudy, they're like gunning on their tail. um and I think at one point there's that scene where they follow Sal, I think too, near the middle of the movie. They have like wires on him, like they have like all kinds of different like stuff on him. I think at that point they have like wires on his phone and shit, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like following him around New York City, which is a really good scene. That one's like very tense and chill, but it feels pretty real.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely feels like as if you are kind of one of the cops following
Mm-hmm.
around, and there's this like sense of tension. I think that's something that's done really well in this film. And I think this has a lot to do with the long lenses that they use and
Yeah,
the
definitely.
single takes and that kind of stuff. But it often
Yeah.
feels like you're kind of spying on everyone. Like even when you watch the cops, like it feels like you're spying on them. Like you're not supposed to
It
be
looks
in the
like it
room.
looks like when you see people walk down the street, it looks like you're seeing them walk down the street while you're driving in a car.
Yeah, 100%.
It's great.
And then
I
there's
love the look of it.
oh yeah, it looks great.
I
And then
love
there's
I
also
love I
yeah.
love a I love a nice dirty like 70s New York City movie. It's so good.
So good. And then there's also the subplot of the mobsters are struggling to get the money to the French people, or like the French guy needs like the money like right away. He's like,
Right.
I need the money, like whatever, 500,000 million, whatever amount of money it is.
Yeah.
And they're like, that's a lot of money to have like right now. Like you need to give us a hot minute. And there's kind of
Yeah.
the back and forth between them.
Like, is the deal gonna go through or not?
It does.
A lot of heroin. It does, yeah. Well, actually, yeah, and like the speaking of the French people, like with the I think that with the um they find out about the French guy through Sal. So while they're tailing Sal, they come across like a meeting of them at a restaurant or someplace, and they now have Pierre, the old French guy, the drug dealer. They now have him on their sites, and now they're trailing him and following him and all that stuff. So, and then you get like the once again another trailing scene. There's a lot of trailing scenes. There's a lot of following scenes, like we said, but you get a really good one where Popeye follows Pierre.
Ooh,
That
that's
ends in
the
the subway.
oh, that scene
Really
is
good scene.
that's probably my favorite trailing scene in the movie. It at least like top three.
It's because
Because
it's a
yeah.
two nemesis like battling it out.
And Pierre, he's a pretty smart guy, so he
He's
quickly
smart.
realizes that he's being trailed. And if we're being honest, Popeye isn't like super secretive about his trailing. Like he
Not
stays
really.
he stays pretty
He looks
damn
like a cop.
close. He does. He looks like a cop who can't stay more than like 5 feet away from this guy. Like there's no sort of uh, like ability to hide himself in a crowd of any sort. Like you can barely clearly see who he is, and
Yeah.
he's on Pierre's trail, but he's trying to play it real cool, and so he's like
But
following him
yeah,
around the city.
yeah. And yeah, like you said, like Pierre, he finds out like he's not stupid, and he kind of like loses him, and he's able to trick him a little bit until they like get into the subway.
That getting going on and off the subway is such a cool like little moment because like they'll both get
It's
on,
great.
and then like Pierre will come off, and then of course like Popeye has to pretend like he's getting off for entirely different
Yeah.
reasons.
Yeah. It's fun. It's funny. That's a funny scene. The whole thing. Because yeah, it's so ridiculous. It's just like his goal is to follow him. Popeye's goal is to follow him. But it's suspicious when every time that Pierre gets off, he gets off. Like, it's like it's very transparent at that point.
And then of course Pierre gets away
Yeah,
because
he like tricks him. He like does like an incredible like shuffle like out of the subway, then immediately back in, and totally owns Gene Hackman. And he like waves as he waves at him as as the subway goes by. It's a good yeah, he gets owned completely.
it's a great moment.
I'm trying to think what's after that. I think like
I have no
after that
idea.
scene, you get like yeah, like you said, they're like trying to like not the French people are not trying to mess up their tables, and the mobsters want to keep everything really well put together. But at this point, the French people and the mobsters, they know that who Popeye is, and he's a cop, and they know that he's like on the trail, so they try to kill him. And that seems crazy. It's like really violent. It's a violent movie.
I'm trying to think of the scene. I don't know why I can't think of it.
He's getting sniped from there's like a sniper on the roof.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's like walking down the
He's just
street.
walking. Yeah.
He's just like chilling. And then this sniper comes out and just starts shooting people. Of course, he's trying to hit
Yeah.
him, but they first kill a woman, which he just happens to be
A
behind.
random woman. Yeah.
Just like a random woman who has a baby.
Yeah. Awesome.
And so he like runs to the side of the building so he's not getting shot. And the sniper's like still shooting, trying to get him. And he like, shimmies his way along the building and then into the building and then up the stairs. But of course, when he gets to the roof, the sniper has mysteriously disappeared.
Yeah, so he knows he's being, sought after. He's ready to uh you know it's time for him to be executed by the French people. And I think he's able to find him, right? He finds him running away. Who's the French person's bodyguard assassin guy. And of course that results in, one of the most famous scenes in the whole movie, of course.
That incredible chase scene.
I don't know who said it, but like some director said that like, yeah, like after French Connection, it's just like I don't think any like car chase scene compares. Like it's impossible, which I think I would probably disagree with, but it is very good. It's very good.
It's such a
It's
good
insane.
scene. Because the guy, he jumps onto, well, after some, running around and up and downstairs and across Brooklyn, he
Yeah.
jumps onto a subway train, which is elevated. So it's an elevated subway train.
Yeah.
And Popeye can't get on the train. So he's like, So
Shit.
he runs around. He does that thing that cops do in movies where he steals someone's car because it's for police business or whatever.
Exactly.
Guy's like, what the fuck? But he steals his car and then he like is driving under this elevated subway and he's got to like constantly like look up to make sure like he's
Yeah.
following the subway and he's like, running around cars and all this shit. And of course, famously,
It's so good.
So good. And of course, famously, this scene wasn't properly shut down for like filming of it. So a lot of the
Yeah,
shots,
they just filmed in the streets. Yeah.
Yeah, they just put, because of course, when they were shooting this film, they got the approval of the NYPD and the police force. Right. So they kind of had like, they're pretty chummy with them. So they're able to like control the lights. And they put like a little siren on top of their car. Mm-hmm. But otherwise they're just shooting like all of those scenes with it, except of course where they hit stuff that was planned. But basically whenever they're driving around, like during that car chase scene, it's just them, actually.
Yeah, especially I'm guessing like all this stuff that's basically POV of like the point of view of the car is pretty much just like all the stuff that they just basically did like in the real streets. And I mean, there's a lot of like close calls and stuff, and it's great. It's just a great sequence because you have Gene Hackman, Popeye, driving through this like crazy like traffic New York City situation. Mm-hmm. And he's like getting banged up, he's running into things, he's crashing into things, but he still has to keep going. And then you have the assassin guy in the subway also trying to like move through the subway. He kills a cop. He puts the train conductor, like he points a gun at his head and tells him to like keep like skip stops and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't get caught. Just those two things running together is just like edited very, very well and very seamless.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. But of course, the guy like running the train freaks out and then basically passes out. So then the car goes faster and faster, and our assassin's freaking out because he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to run a subway car, and he's just killed a I don't know, subway police officer person.
Yeah, he kills a police officer and he kills it's almost like, what are those guys that I have on planes?
Oh, like an air marshal?
Yeah, it's almost like a train marshal. And he kills that guy, like you said. And yeah, and before, they can stop the train, like you said, it crashes. And I love it too. They're both so banged up by the end of their encounter.
Mm-hmm. But after the crash, the assassin jumps off of or he like gets off the tracks and he ends up getting away, doesn't he?
No, he doesn't. He it's that kind of iconic scene where he gets on the stairs and he walks down and he runs into Popeye, and as he's running up the stairs, he gets shot in the back.
That's right.
Iconic, very iconic. Yeah.
Very iconic
Yeah,
moment.
and that's the end of that scene. Just a really good, just really good action. Very, no music, nothing super fancy about it. It's just like really good, solid, just incredible, directing and editing. It's just it's a legitimately exciting. I don't know if it's like the greatest car chase scene ever, but it's a top one for sure.
It's definitely a contender.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So yeah, at this point they're like, I think they feel like they need the car, right? I think they
Yes.
have the good idea that they need the car, and they have another stakeout. They have another stakeout. There's so many stakeouts to get the car, and I think like they have like a false flag where I think they're staking out the car, and then a bunch of people are gonna rob it, and then they stop
Yeah.
them. They're like, "What the fuck?"
You're just like these kids who want to steal like the rims, I guess. Just like the stereo and stuff out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But
And they're like, "Ah, god dang," because they're looking for the real guys. They don't really care about the kids.
mhm. They want the arrests. They want the big arrests, the big drug
Mhm.
deal thing. But that's not what they
So
get. So they're like, we'll just
yeah,
impound the car.
yeah, and we'll just see what's in the stupid car, and then they just like go through this very like long scene where they're
Very
ripping up the
long.
car. I mean, they rip it up.
They go through every single inch of that car. And they don't, I mean, they really go all in when they go into ripping up the car. Like it's not just like a couple of second montage. Like it's a good solid couple of minutes of just
Yeah,
tearing
yeah,
away
it's good.
pieces, pulling out chairs. They're very thorough. But the mechanic's
Very
like,
thorough.
look, there's no drugs here. Like we've looked literally everywhere. And one of
I
the
think Cloudy
detectives,
is yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think it's him. He's like, how much does the car weigh? The guy's like, it weighs like I don't know, like
However much.
how a certain weight. And the guy's like, that's the incorrect weight. Like that's some amount of weight over. And they're
Yeah,
like, what? And so they've realized that because of the weight, which I guess they probably should have done first, that the drugs are definitely in the car. He's like, I've checked everywhere except this one
except
spot.
one place. It's so funny. It's just funny. It's just like, oh, there's like one place. And of course, yeah, I love, Gene Hackman. He's just an amazing actor. He's so good. Like he's just so good throughout the movie. I love when he's angry and yelling at people. It's just a completely convincing like type of like character. I love it.
Mhm.
And yeah, they like rip through it, and sure enough, they find nice packages of heroin.
They're like, oh shit, this is it. This is the thing. And then, of course, parallel while this is happening, the actor is looking for his car. And so he comes to the same like place that they're tearing up the car. And he's like, look, I've been looking for my car for a while now. And he's like harassed because he's like, well, I just, out there he was looking for a place to shoot the film or whatever. They were like doing location scouting or whatever is the story that he sells.
Yeah.
And he's like, I just need my car back. And of course, lo and behold, his car is delivered back to him so they can have that kind of final thing so they can follow him and see what's really going on here.
Yeah, they want to get like they don't want to like bust the actor guy. They want to bust
Right.
everyone. So they have,
Mm-hmm.
they want to make them think that like everything is okay. And yeah, they drive out to like a random house or
Warehouse.
building in the middle of nowhere, and everyone's there. All of our favorite characters are there. Our favorite drug dealers are there. They're hanging out. And they're like, yup, there's the heroin. It's really good. And here's all the money. And they put it into something. And they're like, pleasure doing business with you. And then they drive away. I think it's like a Pierre and Sal. They drive away, and they get into they get to a nice police blockade, and Popeye's right there, and he waves at them, and they're like, oh, and they turn around, and it's kind of very comedic, or they're like driving, and it's like all of a sudden there's a police blockade, and they're like, oh, and they just turn around.
Or Pierre never had a chance. Very. Bitch. I'm trying to
You don't
think.
remember what happens next?
I don't know why I can't remember like 10%
They
of this
they
movie. I
go.
could.
All they do is they just drive to the warehouse and get them.
But oh, that's right. Okay, I remember. They go back to the warehouse, and then they basically built. The police have built like this, like basically military level fortress outside of like a barrack, basically, and they're shooting down criminals left and right.
Yeah, yeah. There's like some shooting going on.
But of course, Popeye, because he doesn't play by the rules, he goes into
Jumps
the.
in.
He jumps in. He's like, I'm not waiting for no man. And so he's like walking around this creepy warehouse, and he's got his gun out. He's ready to shoot anybody. And then Sal, or not Sal, his partner shows up.
Cloudy, yeah.
Yeah, Cloudy. He's like, I'm here to help you. And he's like, yeah. And then they hear a noise,
Yeah. It's so
and
funny.
Popeye immediately shoots him. Like
He
he
just
immediately
immediately
shoots
shoots a
this man to
guy.
death.
And they're
And
like, "Oh, we got him!" And he goes over, and it's like, "Oh, it's the other guy, like one of the other detectives from the movie." Whoops.
this that scene reminded me a lot of The Third Man, that last scene where they're in the sewers with Orson Welles, and he's like running after Orson
Yeah,
Welles. You know what I mean? It kind of has like
yeah.
similar
That's
vibes.
probably honestly, yeah. Like I know Friedkin was like big into Orson Welles. He said that
Mhm.
like when he saw Citizen Kane, it like changed his life and like made him want to make movies. So I'm bet it's like there's probably some
Homage of
influence
sorts,
there. Maybe not even homage, just like a, an influence, a
yeah,
coincidental influence for sure.
for sure. But Pierre gets away. They don't get Pierre. They just
Yeah, I know.
murder a
He's
random
like, I'm gonna
cop.
get him. I'm gonna get him. They're running around still, and you hear a gunshot, which is weird. But if you find out like through the title cards that everybody gets arrested and sent to jail, and Popeye and Cloudy they get like taken off the beat, and then yeah, it's like Pierre, like he escaped and he lives in France. It's like that's the end of the movie.
End of the movie.
It's a very dark ending. Well, I wouldn't even say it's a dark ending. It's just kind of like a very like um I don't know. Do I really care that Pierre got away? I don't know if I do or not. Maybe I do a little bit. I mean, like obviously like people who like profit off of the selling of drugs to, like uh lower class or impoverished communities to make money off of
Mhm.
them and their dependency on certain drugs, like that's awful, that those are bad people because they don't care. But of course,
Yeah.
like but of course, like they exist because of like certain laws that are in place, and the people who try to like uphold those laws are cops, and cops are like, especially in this movie, they're a little violent, and they like use their badge and stuff to like have sex and fuck with minorities, and steal from them, and shoot at people, and they so part of you does want them to get the drug dealers, but also it's like, I guess like the ending is sort of symbolized just how, I guess, futile the whole war on drugs battle really is.
100%. And you know what? The cops being taken off the beat, probably a good idea. That was probably the best move.
Probably, yeah. I don't remember where they got like transferred to or whatever, but yeah, they're
I
just
don't
kind
know.
of they're I guess they're not doing drugs or narcotics anymore.
And that's the movie.
That's a movie, yeah.
So, Andrew, you want to give some final thoughts and rating?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Like the movie a lot. I figured I would. It's one of those movies where it's like I'm probably gonna like it at least a little bit, if not a lot. 70s action crime thriller, very very concise, well edited, well shot. It's not exactly the most like stylistic movie ever, but everything looks
Mhm.
good. Everything is completely like competently filmed, and it looks great, and it's amazing, and you know, good, kind of like you said, war on drugs story. It's violent. The everything is like well choreographed in terms of like the chase scenes and like the stakeout scenes, and it's a police, I guess what's the word, like a police procedural, just
Hmm.
very like I said, documentary film elements, not a lot of music going on. It's just, and in that regard, I really, really, really liked it. And of course, at the end of the day, too, the movie is highly carried by the performance of Gene Hackman, who is, one of our greatest American actors. I mean, one of
Hmm.
the greatest of all time. Just an incredible voice, and commitment to the role. And yeah, I think I'm gonna like trepidatiously give it like a 9 out of 10, but it's more like a 9, maybe bordering on an 8, because I
Hmm.
really liked it a lot. But I don't necessarily know if it'll go down as like, I don't think it's perfect in every way.
Yeah.
But that's really only my preference. I do think it's really good.
Yeah. I feel that. I had a lot of the same opinions. I think it looks really cool. I love the long lenses that they use. I love how dirty and gross and grimy New York just looks in the 70s. Gene Hackman, of course, gives an incredible performance. I would say overall, there's a lot of great performances in this. I think my big complaint with this is most of the film is people just walking around, staking out other places, driving around. It's a lot of just sitting around and watching things happen, which I understand is kind of like sort of the point, and it's supposed to kind of have this pace to it. But I just found myself kind of wandering off sometimes at these moments because these scenes do last very long. Although, of course, when it hits, I mean, those chase scenes are great, especially the car chase scenes and, all the chases on foot. And there's a lot of ridiculous stuff that happens. I found it a little hard to take the film too seriously because it is a little ridiculous. And maybe that's partly just because of, you know, since this film came out, there's been a lot of influence from this film. So, a lot of the classic 70s, 80s, 90s buddy cop films do kind of pull from this. So maybe that sort of affect my view of the film. But I had a good time. I don't know. I found myself kind of wandering off at moments. I just thought that the pacing at times was a little slow for me. So I'm going to give this film a 6 out of 10.
All right.
All right. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you to our wonderful editor, Shannon. They do an incredible job of editing this podcast every single week and continue to do it. So thank you, Shannon. And you can find this podcast wherever you hear podcasts, and you can find me at Austin Lugo 12.
You can find me on Twitter at ADHarp24. I'm also on Letterboxd at Retro Andrew, RETR0 Andrew.
And you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Letterbox at With Nothing to Say Pod. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you again.
Hey.